in over 2.5 years. It's been over
live,
2.5
people,
years
live and
that
direct.
I've not really posted anything that, is a message from myself. I used to be very consistent in posting messages that were really bent or aimed at encouraging people, strengthening people throughout the time of COVID. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that has really been, aimed at being an encouragement. I remember during the times of COVID that I really started to address the, dealing with the spirit of fear and self-doubt. And throughout all of that time, people were engaged, and I'm grateful. It was encouraging to hear that the message was not merely, going out, but that people were actually receiving from it. And so for 2.5 years, over 2.5 years, I've not really said anything. I have walked through the season. We have been through the storm and the rain, and we have kept ourselves strong. In fact, let me correct that. God kept us strong. And I'm grateful for everything that the Lord has done and how he has kept my family, because guess what? We have been through so much. And that is why tonight I thought it was time to speak. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it is written, there's a time to speak and there's a time to keep silence. And I do believe that the time has come to speak for now, for now. So tonight I want to take you on a little bit of a journey, and I pray that you will stay with me. I pray that you will strap on your seatbelts and be ready to take this ride with me. Many of you for some time have been concerned as to what has been going on with regards to Tory. Just give me one sec, please. I'm so sorry, but just give me one moment. This won't take long. Yeah. A lot of you have been concerned about him. I am grateful to all of you who have loved him, have stayed with him. And as you know, we've just come through a trial that ended in the way that it ended. And I appreciate all of you who at least have decided not to allow your mind to be hijacked by a narrative that others would want you to believe, as though you have no sense, as though you have no mind, as though you should never be allowed to think for yourself. And that's basically what it has been. So I really want to go back, just buying a little bit of time, because I would like for as many ears as I possibly can get to hear what I have to say tonight, because I believe that I'm speaking from a place of truth, from a place of love. And some of you who are coming on, I appreciate, by the way, a couple of you contacted us, my wife's page, and a couple of you who have said, hey, listen, how can we help? Because it's very obvious that there are certain forces that would not want my voice to speak tonight. But this is not new. This kind of warfare began just over 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years. No, we are, 2.5 years and a couple of months ago, let's say, give or take. So tonight, I want to take the time to paint you a different picture, because there are those who felt that it was important to paint my son, Sonstar Peterson, aka the artist Tory Lanez, with a particular brush and to hold him up in a particular light to make people think that he is a monster, that he is this really, really terrible person that did a really, really terrible thing. When I look at the fact that these people were willing to go to no length to make sure that story is told and told and told and told, it makes you question why. You see, I was the first person that he called when he was able to call on the phone to say something about the situation that had happened back then. I must say this to you, however, before I get started. It is not my intention tonight to go into merits of the ongoing trial. Thank you. He is, in fact, innocent. God bless you for stating that, and all of you who have stated and continue to state that my son should, in fact, be free. So I am not going to get into speaking about a case that is not over, although many would like to think that it is or would hope that it is. So I'm not going to get into speaking about the merits of a case, about the legal realities of it. They are experts in that field who are standing up to address it now. And so I will allow them to do what they do best. And I will do what I know that God has gifted me to do best. And that's number one, to tell the truth. That's number one. That's number two, to be a voice for truth. You see, truth is not a philosophy, people. Truth is not an ideology. Truth is not a religion. It's not a doctrine. I have been a servant of God for years. My children grew up as they saw us go from sometimes city to city, nation to nation. We lived in a lot of different places. And on one hand, that really gave us an international perspective of the world and what it's really all about. And so there are some things that I do want to say, and I would ask that you can help me to get it out as far and wide as it is possible to get it out. I pray that those of you who showed up for Live at 7 to find that my page had gone dark, was just a black screen there, that I pray that you return. Thank you again for those of you who actually reached out. I've had a couple of calls, some messages, and people are saying, hey, how can we help you to do this? How can we help you to do that? Can we get you on station head, et cetera, et cetera? And I appreciate all of that. I'm not coming tonight with vengeance in my heart. I'm not coming to try to tear people down. I'm not trying to render evil for evil. As the word of God that I have taught and lived or sought to live for years have told me to love even my enemies. It's not easy sometimes, I can tell you that. But I have sought to walk the love walk, and I've taught my children to do the same. One thing I do know for sure is that I never hold anyone in my heart in unforgiveness, because I've learned that unforgiveness is like pouring acid into a container. If you pour acid into a container, it will first affect the container before it affects anything outside of the container. So I do not ever allow people and what they have to say to be either the standard by which I determine anything in this life. I would rather forgive people so that I can have a clear heart, that I'm able to hear God. I've been told that if I were to go live tonight, there are those who will take my words and spin them for whatever they want to make it say. However, I've also learned not to fear men, but only to fear Almighty God. You see, Jesus said this one day. He said, do not fear those who can kill the body, but rather fear him who after the body has been killed can also destroy the soul in hellfire. So I've learned over the years not to fear men. Now we are living in a time of the internet. We're living in a time of social media. And it is so sad to see social media becoming a place that is so full of toxicity. People, internet trolls who don't like to see the beauty of a life unfold. You know, they're like moles. Digging up dirt on people is to them like though it was gold. And that's the world we live in right now. I think that we have the power to change the narrative, because one thing that the evil empire fears more than anything, they fear masses of people thinking for themselves. That's what they fear. That's their biggest fear. You know, we live in a world where the powers that be tell us that we should walk around with these blindfolds on. They want us to be walking around with blindfolds, and we are to depend on them to be the only one that can lead us or direct us where we should go. And they never want us to remove the blindfolds, because they fear that if we remove the blindfolds, not only will we realize that we can see, but they fear that we will realize that the people who are leading us around are actually the ones that are blind. And their continued existence depends on us never knowing that they really are the ones that are blind. Do not think that because you have money or because you are in politics, that makes the light automatic to you. It does not. So let me start here. Let me go back to the day of the verdict at the courthouse, because I left that courthouse and the cameras were there. I did not come out saying, oh, I'm about to say something and this would be a good moment to make a statement so that what I'm going to say will go viral. That was never the issue at all. I came out because I had sat for 2.5 years seeing an injustice being perpetrated against an innocent man. There are those who would say, oh, well, that's your son. You will believe anything. Truth be that before I had children, I was sworn to serve the kingdom of heaven. I am an ambassador of that kingdom. So people can say whatever they want. After this message today, there are those who will applaud. There are those who will disapprove. And there are those who will downright try to make it say what they want it to say because they so fear the truth coming out. So that day I left the courthouse. So let me start there. Like I said, I left the courthouse, and as I left, I responded in a way that some would say, oh, he was so emotional. It was just an emotional father. Listen to me. I fought many battles in my life, and I fought battles for people who were not even my children. I've been a voice for the voiceless for a long time. Some of you may not know this, and that's why I'm introducing myself, that you may know who is standing in front of you right now. All right? So I spoke up because I'm not someone who have been conditioned over the years to fear the ramifications of evil people. I fear God. I fear God. And at the end of the day, anyone who could ever seek to shut my mouth or stop me from speaking the truth to the point of trying to extinguish my flame, guess what? The only thing you can do is give me a one-way ticket to heaven. You can't do anything to me. You can't do anything to me. So that day, it was not merely an emotional outburst. I saw an evil system. I sat in a courthouse and I watched how evidence was literally obscured, blocked, barred, everything and anything that was actual evidence that could speak to my son's innocence. I saw people go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that it never came in to view. And now here we are. And it's interesting because I'm seeing that the people are really not as stupid as many would like to think that they are. Because I've seen that people have actually looked at all of it and say, nah, something's wrong. Something is really, really wrong here. And we're just not buying it. So as soon as certain folks saw that the narrative was not going in the direction that they wanted it to go, as soon as they saw that, in fact, it was not how they thought it was supposed to have thrust certain people further into the stratosphere of superstardom while using my son as a sacrificial lamb to make that happen, because that's been the narrative for 2.5 years. That's been the narrative. And as soon as they saw that it was not going that way, that in fact his numbers were rising while certain other people's numbers were falling, they began to dump onto the internet from the attorney's office, from the district attorney's office. They began to dump things that were supposed to have been evidence in a trial as though the guilty verdict was not enough. Then you had persons like this lady, what's her name? This journalist, Megan Cuniff. This woman actually went on and said that she saw my wife and I giving transcripts or leaking information to certain journalists to put out on the internet. Wait. Stop for a second. Number one, why would the district attorney's office give us things to put out on the internet to make my son look even worse? Hence, I'm talking about the interview with Kelsey. Why? That makes no sense. So I had to realize that this woman was saying things for the sake of clout. Moving right along, here we are today. Long time ago, I made a decision before God. I said, God, if I ever sin or mess up in private, I will come before you and I will repent. I will ask forgiveness in private. But as a leader, if I mess up publicly, then I will go to the people before whom I've messed up and I will ask them to forgive me publicly. That's been my stance. So that's why I'm even going back to the day on the courthouse steps, because many of you were led to believe that it was an emotional outburst on my part. It really was not merely an emotional outburst. You would have to know my history. You would have to know how God has used me in nations around the world. You would have to know that there are times when I've stood up with great boldness to speak on behalf of those who were marginalized, those who did not have a voice, to speak on behalf of those who people did not want to be able to have a voice, to publish their pain and the things that were going on with them. And so that's been an issue for some time. So you can chalk that one up to the burden of leadership. But I want to ask a real serious question. What do you do when you see injustice happening, when it is so blatant and so plain before you? What do you do? Do you just sit back and fear the powers that be and say nothing? Is that the response that we are expected to have in the midst of injustice? For me, I remember what the scriptures say. Number one, woe to you when all men speak good of you. You see, when everybody is speaking wonderful of you, somewhere along the line, you're compromising, because not everybody loves the truth. And if you are just everybody is speaking wonderfully of you, it means you're not telling the truth somewhere or the other. So I don't fear when people begin to be concerned that I speak or say what is right, even though it can cost. I want to tell you all something. We have been conditioned in life to always take the path of least resistance because we don't like discomfort. We don't want discomfort. We fear anything that makes us uncomfortable. But we don't realize that sometimes discomfort is a part of the process. Discomfort is a part of the process. A diamond never becomes a diamond just by not going through discomfort, if you will. Diamonds are formed 240 miles below the Earth's, I forget what you call that crust below the surface. And it is processed by heat and by pressure. The heat there is over 3,000 degrees. And 50, what do they call that? 50 millibars of pressure. They said if you want to understand that, then imagine the weight of 2,000 grown men standing on your foot. That's the kind of pressure that it takes to form a diamond from what? Just what we would consider coal, carbons, coal. So sometimes in life, if you are going to be everything that you can possibly be, if the beauty that is on the inside of the creativity that's in you is going to come out, sometimes you're going to go through fire. You're going to go through pressure. Don't fear it. Don't fear it. Don't let people make you fear that. So let me go back to some 2.5 plus years ago. When all of this stuff happened, a lawyer entered into the picture, a man by the name of Alex Spiro. He is a former DA in New York. He used to be the NBA's spin doctor. He was their go-to guy for NBA ball players. And then he went into private practice or became a part of a firm. And this man has been on the record. It's not something I'm making up. It's already out there on the internet years ago. He said, when I'm going to try a case of a high-profile case, I first try it in the court of public opinion. And so that's what they did. The strategy was basically to paint a smear campaign against a young man, an artist, to try to make him feel or try to make the public believe that he is the worst person that's ever walked on the planet. How could he be so terrible to shoot a black woman and all of that? Some of the people who piled on, some of them, when they say a black woman, they sound so insincere because they never cared about black women before that. But all of a sudden, this became a good narrative. It boosted views. It gave more likes. It sounded really, really wonderful. And, you know, for them to be on the side of this defenseless black woman. Let me stop right here and say this, and this might come as a shock to many of you. But guess what? Both my son, myself, and others of our family have long decided that we are not going to hold any animosity against Megan Pete, aka Megan the Stallion. We forgave that girl long time ago, because again, we know that the principle of forgiveness is important in order to cleanse one's heart, to cleanse one's soul, and to not be, you know, bound up with hatred and you know, hatred, trust me, resentment, bitterness, those things can actually cause diseases of the bones. It has been proven, and it can cause sickness in your body because you're holding on to something that is negative against the real life force in your life. So whatever you do in life, no matter how hard it is, forgive, because forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for you. It's for you. And so that's what we decided. Some will actually, no doubt, question, is he actually saying that Tory forgave Megan for all of what's going on. Yes, we have forgiven her. But what we will not back down from is the machine that has been in the background trying to press a narrative in order to use this girl for what they have used her for. So let's move on from there. They came in with a smear campaign that was second to none. Yes, it was during the time of the George Floyd situation, the Breonna Taylor situation. And they basically tried to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. That's not my saying. That's an old people's proverbs who says you cannot make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And reality check is that they were trying to make someone be an icon for civil rights who did not have any such desire, who did not have any such convictions about being that at all. And it came across very insincere to a lot of people. You see, the powers that be and those who actually have the power of the machine in their hands can make us think all day long that that was for real, but people saw right through that. And so a lot of that began to just fall on its face. The strategy was simply this. Number one, they went behind the door, closed doors, and got the powers that be to place a gag order on my son. He wasn't supposed to say anything. He wasn't supposed to say anything. Even to the place when he sought to use his art to speak for himself because that was his only way. There were so many voices. Oh my God, how insensitive, blah, 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 blah. But I have to ask you, what would you do in such a situation? At the end of the album called Daystar, the last song is called Life. And he ends that song by saying, you get up one day and you have thousands of people hating on you all at once. It brings your world down. I would like the youth of today to take me as an example, because I don't care about none of those things. I will continue to stand up, and I'm paraphrasing now, so let me leave that alone. So the strategy was very simple. Shut his mouth while the mouth of those with the biggest megaphone on planet Earth piled on and said everything. Can you imagine? 2.5 years, every single day, you have to get up to that, knowing that you did not do this. And so that was the face that they decided would be best, would best serve their narrative. Who really is Daystar Peterson, people? Who really is Daystar Peterson? 1 second, please. Who really is he? The fact is that he's one of the kindest individuals that you could ever meet in your life. The truth is that they don't want you to know is that he is someone who actually goes out of his way to help so many people. And I can tell you testimony upon testimony of things that he does and never says anything about it. Never lets anyone else know what he does in the background to help people. He will never tell you that. And there's one young lady who got in contact with me that was diagnosed as being bipolar, having a bipolar disorder, that he paid her rent. She told me, not him, because he would never say it. He paid her rent for 1 full year because she was a single mother battling through depression and situations going on in her life. He will never come and tell me what every security personnel that's ever worked for and with him has told me one by one, independent of each other. I've never worked with a celebrity like this. I've worked with others. Sometimes they make us stand outside as they go inside and have meals and do all this. He has never treated us like that. He's only ever treated us like family. But yet the world will try to make you think that this is the worst kind of human being, and it's not true. So I can't continue to sit here and just hear this over and over and over and over again and say nothing. Now my son is fighting for his life because of things that have been done in a terrible way. And they would have us to just do nothing, just say nothing. But today I'm asking you to help me to get the real story out. Because I did not realize in the beginning, when this media war started, what the end result of it would really be. I didn't realize what the strategy really was and how there are those who felt it necessary to push this narrative and what they were pushing it for. And so here we are. But this is not just about Daystar. This is not just about him. It's really about the fact that these kinds of injustices have been happening for a long time, and they go in secret. Nothing is ever said. People are being destroyed. Families get torn apart. Oh yes, I know that there are real crimes in our society, and I don't condone any of it. I don't believe anybody should be victimized by anybody. I don't think that that's what God wants. He gave us a world that is so beautiful. If it's messed up, it's because we messed it up. So he never intended for us to be so inhumane one to another. I understand that that happens. And I understand that if we cannot have the law in our hearts, then it would many times take the law outside of us to keep us moving in the direction that brings some semblance of peace or harmony within a society. I understand all of those things. But I also understand that many people, their lives are being destroyed, ripped apart. And although we have some good people in the system, sometimes the system gets it totally wrong. We have innocence projects now that have been able to go back, and sometimes people have been in prison for God knows how long. And had it not been for somebody who took up their cause, they would still be there and they were innocent. So the system does not always get it right. Many times they get it very, very wrong. Has anybody ever told you that for the past 3-4 years, Sonstar Peterson, aka Tory Lanez, has been on the board of Unite the People, which is a prison reform platform and initiative run by a very faithful and dedicated man, Caesar McDowell? Has anybody ever told you that he has been on that board for almost 4 years, and that he has many times used his own resources to ensure that people come out of prison that were wrongly incarcerated or unduly sentenced? Supposedly, prison is to be about rehabilitating people, but that's not been the point. That's not been the issue. So many people come out destroyed, broken, and if they don't have any system or support, not only will they never make it back into society, they will be destroyed for the rest of their lives, mentally, emotionally. Some people come out being greater criminals than when they went in, because an environment is created that is not meant to rehabilitate or make a human being better in any way. So tonight, I ain't come on here just to take up your time. I came here to let you know that my son is not what people want you to think he is. He's not what they want you to think he is. He's actually someone who is kind, he's compassionate, and there is no way Not just because I'm his father. You got to understand, for the last 40 years of my life, I've dealt with people all around the world on at least 3 continents, several islands throughout the Caribbean. I've been involved in helping especially young people to be entrepreneurs, teach them life skills, entrepreneurial skills. I've seen people come from absolutely nothing till today. Their lives have meaning. They're actually doing things and helping other people in their lives. That's what my life has been all about. And that's what I passed on to my children. And so I want to say two things. In 1990, I went to my bed and I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw that I was driving in downtown city in Canada. And I was pulled over by the police in the vision, and they said, give us the manuscript on the destiny of the black race. Mind you, in the natural world, I had never even conceived of writing a manuscript like that, much less putting out a book. But that's what happened in the dream. They said, give us the manuscript on the destiny of the black race. I went to the trunk of my vehicle, took it out, walked it back to the squad car, and I handed it to the officer. And as I was handing it, I said to the man, I said in my mind, rather, I handed it to him, but in my mind, I said, you can take this, but you can't take what's in my heart. And from then, long story short, I started to study, I started to research on what the plight of black people were. And as soon as I started that, again, I went to bed one night and I was thrust into a
We are having minor technical difficulties, people. They have muted his video. Um, the sound went out, so I guess he's gonna go out and come back in. But as you can see, he's not bashing anyone. He is letting us know his feelings on what has happened and the way things have been going in the American society. But hopefully he gets to come back on. Because I didn't know that Tory was on the prison reform thing too. I just, but that's kind of the personality that he does have. It's not that I'm gonna do something because, oh, it's gonna sound good when I say I did this, or it's gonna look good when I did this. He did something because he wanted to see a change in a system that was broken. And he took his time and energy and put it into that. So hopefully Sunstar comes back, or because I didn't know that about Tory. Not that it has changed how I feel about Tory. Like I say, I still stand by it. Tory's from Brampton. Tory is from Brampton. So when they said that, oh, Tory said he's from Canada, when they were in the car.
Sorry about that, folks.
We're back.
Something went awry, and but we're back. I hope that I can get you all back with me, because I'm sharing something that I believe that's very important that you need to hear right now. Thank you all for rejoining. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you so much. Yes. All right, here we go. Yeah, so imagine you go to bed, you're minding your own business, and you're thrust into a dream, and God is speaking to you about a race of people on the earth that happen to have dark colored skin. That was my experience, like straight up, no cap. That was my experience. And God said to me in the dream, he said, the devil fears you, meaning the black race. Why? Because in the days of the intensification of spiritual warfare, he said, I'm going to call for a particular people to come before me with a particular gift. He says that's when Africa will rise and create prayer cover for the move of my spirit in the earth. Some of these things I'm saying may be foreign to some of you, but this has been my experience. And as a result of it, I followed that through, and I wrote a book entitled The Destiny of the Black Race since 1990. I took the book out of circulation when I went to Kenya in 2012. I had an encounter that made me know that it had become more relevant to our generation than ever before. And so I actually went and I revised it, and I will be putting it back out into print, because it is important that we know what's going on around us and why people are being targeted. To me, it's more of a spiritual thing than it is a color thing, but the color thing helps. It works for the enemy to keep us divided. That's what society has become. One big division, people falling into tribes, whether it's political or even biological or whatever the case may be. So there is something happening in our world right now, people, and if we don't wake up, we're going to wake up one morning and find that we have literally become, the people who are part of this, like almost like a sci-fi type movie or fantasy movie like The Island, in which people no longer can speak, have a mind of their own. And this whole idea of free speech, it is becoming more and more of a farce. But I can tell you one thing that the powers that be, the evil empire, fear. And it's called the masses of people coming together. Whether they be black, white, blue, brown with yellow polka dots, that's not the issue. The real issue is that they fear when we come together and we speak together and we have a mind of our own. All people are beautiful because below the skin, we are created in the image of God. And we need to understand that. Love is not something we should barter and trade on the internet. Internet trolls, some of you are responsible for people taking their lives. And your trophy is that one day you're going to realize you've just been used. Because of your own pain, you project that onto other people. You allow yourself to be used because somehow it gives your life some form of meaning or existence. It's time to stop that. It's time to really examine our lives and ask ourselves if we really want to be a tool for love or a tool for hate. We can't continue down that pathway. It's not benefiting us. It's not helping us. And as long as we remain divided, we're so easy for the systems of this world to control. That's the thing they fear more than anything at all. Some years ago, a bunch of scientists, the experiment or the science, the looking into the science of what is called epigenetics, that started back in 1942, by the way. And they began to realize that not only each of us are unique by DNA, but there is something inside of our DNA that is called an epigenetic coding. Hear me right now. Please hear me. It's called an epigenetic coding. And it's like computer hardware and computer software. Computer hardware is tangible. You can touch it. You can touch it. You can feel it. Computer software is more intangible. You don't touch it. It's coding, it's writings, it's letters. And, I'm not a computer nerd. So, I'm not going to try to go too far out of my own comfort zone on that. But what they discovered is that your experiences in life write a certain coding. And if you have had traumatic experiences, fearful experiences, it's almost like it is encoded in you. And they started to do an experiment. They put a bunch of mice, lab mice, into cages, and they outfitted them with electrodes. And they put cherry blossoms in the cage. And every time one of these little mice would go close to the cherry blossom to sniff it like that, they would shock the little creature. Till after a while, it began to associate this shocking treatment with being, with smelling or going close to the cherry blossoms. So after a while, they didn't have to administer the shock treatment anymore. The little mice would begin to back up and recoil every time it would see a cherry blossom. But listen to me, people, that was not the real kicker. That was not the real extent of the experiment. What they found is that the mice that were born to the ones that went through this, also, anytime they got close to cherry blossoms, they would back up. They would not go close to the cherry blossoms. Oh my God. They were fearful of the cherry blossoms, and they were the next generation. And then the next generation after that took that on. They actually started such experiments to find out if sicknesses and disease can actually be transferred generationally. And what they discovered out of that led to other experiments like the Tuskegee Airmen experiment. And they began to realize that the traumatic experiences of slavery and colonization had a negative impact on blacks. That is why today we have neighborhoods, ghetto communities in various cities around America where people are herded into, and because of post-traumatic stress disorder, we end up hating one another, we end up killing one another. And the powers that be, they know this. Boys in the Hood was not really that far-fetched. Boys in the Hood was not really that far-fetched. You remember Lawrence Fishburne speaking to, was it Cuba Gooding Jr., his son in the movie, and telling him why there is a liquor store and a gun shop close to each other in these communities of color. I'm here to tell you tonight that we have sat back for too long and allowed ourselves to be programmed by people who are depending on us to cause our own extinction. Every time you go after each other on the internet, you are feeding into that narrative. Every time you tear each other down, you are feeding into that narrative. And so it is very easy for us when one of ours gets caught up, whether for right or wrong, we are ready. We are instantaneously ready to pounce on that one that becomes weaker, because we fear our own demise, not knowing that we actually have the power on the inside of us that could change the narrative and help one another and build better communities rather than allowing ourselves to continue that age-old lie. So it's time to stand up. And I'm going to wind this down tonight. My purpose for coming on here, like I said, and I didn't even go into a lot of what I could have gone into. I want you to know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, I continue to fight, and I will stand up for the justice that needs to be done on behalf of my son or any other human being that God places me in their lives to be able to be a voice for them as long as I have breath in this body. And it is only God that can determine how long I will have breath in this body. I didn't even get to tell you tonight, and this will be the last testimony for now concerning him, and then I will close off with a thought that I want to leave with you. I didn't even tell you that over a year ago, my son called me up on the phone, and he said, Dad, someone introduced me to a young man. His name was Kirshner, who is in the industry. He's a producer, and he does various things in the record industry. This kid was shot 8 times, and was left for dead. He was in the hospital, and Daystar prayed with this young man and spoke to him prophetically and told him that God was not going to allow him to die, told him that God would actually bring him through it. Then he called me after praying for the young man and said, Dad, thus and such is the situation. Let's pray for this kid. And I stood together with him. We were in 2 different cities, and I stood together with him and we prayed for this child, for this young man. Recently, and again, this is something he won't say, so I have to say it tonight. This guy that they're trying to make you believe is some monster that would just shoot somebody because of an argument that said, oh, my career is better than yours. I mean, do they think that we are stupid? When this was happening in a time when the name Tory Lanez was the biggest, most recognized name on planet Earth during COVID? Not only by celebrities in America, but football players who are the rock stars of England and Europe were tuning into that thing. Recently, some people who were concerned started to raise money on behalf of Daystar. He didn't ask them to do it, but they started to raise money, and somehow the word got back to this young man. I've never spoken to him in person. Daystar did not speak to him from his cell, but that young man, when he heard about it and heard that at that point they had raised a certain amount of money, he said to them, keep that money in your pocket. I am going to put up $250,000 for his defense, and he does not have to pay me back one single penny. Because of him today, I'm alive, and because of him, I have now become a millionaire, multi-millionaire in the industry. I'm having 2 Lamborghinis and this and that because of him. And I'm ready to do this. He does not have to pay me anything. He doesn't have to pay me back anything. You tell me who does that for somebody who is so cold and callous that they would just up and shoot some young woman just like that. That's a lie. And the devil is the father of lies and of liars. So as I close this tonight, I do want to say to all of us that we are living at a time that I could take you back 3,000-4,000 years ago to the story of a young boy whose name was David, who was a shepherd, who actually wrote about 98% of the Psalms in the Bible. David, a singer of songs. David, a rapper of rhymes, if you will. I want to take you back to the fact that at some point in his life, he walked into a situation because all of his brothers had gone out to war. The battle was against a group of people called the Philistines from Philistia and the Israelites from Israel. His father sent him to the battle site one day in order to take lunch for his brothers. As he got there, he saw a giant who was described as being 10 feet tall. The air we breathe today don't allow people to grow that big, but trust me, in those days, yeah, they could. A giant was 10 feet tall. His spear was 9 feet long, and it is said that the man was a machine of war, if you will, from the time he was a youth. David got there just in time to hear this man standing up and roaring across the valley, "Send me a man! Let us fight together. We don't need to have all of these two armies go to battle. Send me a man. Let's fight. And if he defeats me, we will become your servants. But if I defeat him, you will become our slaves." That's exactly the narrative. David saw that the whole army of Israel were afraid of this giant. Nobody wanted to go face him. When he inquired, somebody said, "The king has said that if anybody can fight this guy, I'm going to make his family free from taxation in Israel, and he can marry my daughter." That's how desperate the king was. David said, "What? Are you kidding me? That's what the king will do?" He said, "That's wonderful, but I'll kill this guy for free." David was a 15, 16-year-old young man at the time. So much that when he went to the king, when they brought him to the king and said, "This is what this young man is saying," the king said, "What?" He said, "You know what? I'm a shepherd. I've been minding my father's sheep before, and a bear came and I killed the bear. A lion came, I killed the lion. And this Philistine who has no covenant with God will be just like one of them." Somehow the king saw strength and faith and courage in this kid. And he said, "Okay, I'm not going to go through all the details, but we know how it went." Here's something you need to understand, and let me bring it into today's terminology as we're closing this down tonight. Here's what you need to understand. The Philistines comprised of 5 kingdoms. 5 kingdoms. Each had its own king, but they moved together as one unit. They had a large army. Their chariots were made of iron. The Israelites had inferior weapons to them at the time. On top of that, this was the machine. This was the evil empire that had invested all of their strength into this one giant because it was a strategic move to end the war like that. David happened to be there on that day, and he learned that for the past 40 days, this giant had been standing up and saying the same message, and Israel had no message of their own. It is unfortunate, but I feel like for the past 2.5 years, we have stood by as they gagged my son from being able to say anything on his own behalf and spun this narrative. And if it were in today's time, this is how it would look. The Philistines had taken out ad buys on every major station so that any program you would turn on throughout the day, you would hear at least 15 to 20 commercials coming from this giant on every network that it could go out on, not to mention the internet. And in all of this, the Philistines had no message. They had nothing to say. The Israelites had no message. In so much that by the 40th day when David showed up, the men of Israel were now saying what the giant is saying. This is what the giant has been saying. And they were rehearsing his message because they had no message of their own. How long are we going to stand back and have no message, have nothing to say, while people destroy our sons and our daughters? How long? When I was in Kenya in 2012, I was moved to revise the book because I had come to the place where I knew it was going to be more relevant than ever before. Remember, that book was first written in 1990. Now we are in 2011. And I'm being stirred in my heart to revise the book because it's now become more relevant than ever before. It was 2 months after that Trayvon Martin situation happened, followed by a bunch of other situations being caught on cell phones. It's been happening for a long time, but only now the situation was it was being captured in real time and sometimes exported out in real time. The powers that be, the evil empire, hashtag evil empire, has had us tripping over each other for so long and so fearful and so held in a corner that we are fearful to speak against injustice when we see it. We would rather turn on our own. There are certain bloggers out here who, I in some ways I sympathize with you because in fact, Tory himself said it. If in fact that he had done this, he would feel like he should bear the wrath of all of that. He should be called this and he should be called that. But he did not do this, people. He did not do this. We've been up one side and down the other about it. But come to realize there are so many more people than him. So many people out here who through the years of Jim Crowism and all manner of divisiveness, scientific experiments being done on our people, we have people who are now in prison, many cases wrongfully, so we can continue to feed the beast that is called the prison industrial complex. And once they are locked away, many of them do not have the notoriety of a Tory Lanez. So people forget about them. Many of them are incarcerated wrongly. We have a system that is willing to lie and bend the truth. A system that is ready to obscure evidence that can actually prove a man's innocence because it is more important that we fill the columns of L's and W's, W's and L's, wins and losses. That's what it's all about. To some of them, it's a game. People like that have no conscience. Their conscience is no longer there. Don't try to think that they will have a conscience because the only person that can change that is Almighty God. But I want you to know, dear people, God is not trying to make us look at each other in terms of black and white and blah, blah, blah.
There's a lot of people that this is going to go over their heads, right? Because you feel how you feel. But in America, you don't really have the rights like what a Canadian might have, right? So you all are programmed that, okay, I'm going to get this. This is a sentence. This is what it's going to be. In Canada, we believe that equality and fairness and all that good shit is a human right. So to understand Tory, you have to be a Canadian because no Canadian wants to be blamed for something that they didn't do. And I should know. I have one. It's hard to sit down every day and watch some of the videos that some of you guys make on YouTube. And then you don't only make these videos, but you're nasty when you talk about these things. But you don't sit back and you don't think about like what society bred this in you guys. Nothing happens over here in Canada. So we're not as interesting as America is. We're like the diet version of America. Y'all just don't care about whose feelings you hurt. Canadians care about whose feelings they hurt. They're sensitive, they're polite. I remember when I first moved to Canada and I was walking down the street and like I walked past like four people and they smiled at me. Now coming from Jamaica to Canada, like in Jamaica you tell everybody if you're passing, you say good morning, good evening, hello. Even if you pass the dog, you say good evening to the dog. Don't ask me why and talk to any other Jamaican, they're gonna tell you the same thing. You walk past anybody that's older than you, it's good evening, good afternoon, hello. That's it. But in Canada, they just smile. I went home and I asked my mom, I'm like, I'm walking down the street and these people are smiling. My mom goes, yeah, they're Canadian. And it's weird because when my son went to Florida, he was like 4 or 5, I think. And he asked, we were outside, and I don't live in a predominantly black neighborhood, so my neighborhood is just becoming diverse because of the condos that are going up. But we went to Florida and we went outside. My son never been around so many black people at one time, so that was interesting for him. But what he noticed was nobody smiled. Like he's walking by the people in Florida and they all look miserable. Nobody smiled. He went to Jamaica and he noticed the same thing. Nobody smiles for no reason. Canadians smile for no reason. You can have a legit conversation with somebody on the train that you ain't never gonna see again and not feel weird about it. Tory's always smiling, and Tory's always smiling because he's a Canadian. That's the only way I could explain it. Tory's always smiling because Tory's a Canadian. They smile for no reason. And it's funny because other places you go in the world, y'all don't smile. I don't know if y'all are just miserable. Like, I know the economy is miserable, but if you go outside, the Canadians are still smiling. I was crossing the street one day and this kid had on a sign that said free hugs. And when he hugged me, we were in the crosswalk, and I legit didn't know that I needed a hug till that kid hugged me. So yes, I got a random hug from a random stranger. Again, this is Canada. When I say Tory, no gang, no bad people, like Tory is from Brampton. Like living in Toronto, you get to realize that certain areas have their own thing. So Brampton has a lot of Indian people, like Hindu Indian from India, the Bangladesh people, the Pakistani people, the Sikhs. They're most of them are in Brampton because when Brampton was developed, it was a new housing thing. So the houses were cheaper and it's outside of Toronto. But Brampton is its own little world over there. When you're gonna hear about shootings in Toronto, it's always Scarborough. It's always the West End. Like my little area here in Midtown, nothing happens. Believe me, nothing really happens. There's no shootings in my neighborhood. None. The only popping you hear is when the fireworks go off. So when you're gonna talk about gun violence and especially against a female, no, that's some Scarborough thing. That's probably some West End thing, depending on where in the West End it is. So when I said Tory ain't no gangster, Tory might act gangster, but Tory ain't no real gangster. Y'all talk about Tory, oh, Tory punched this guy, he punched that guy. Why is it that y'all only care about what Tory did? Something must have led to it. And for y'all to say that Tory got mad because Meg, they said his music ain't shit. Yo, Tory been getting clowned in Toronto. Tory been getting clowned about his music. So the clown his music is nothing new to Tory. That's not a shooting warrants a shot. I don't care who wants to agree with me and who doesn't want to agree with me. Y'all are biased. Y'all feel certain way, and because you're online and because you know that you're gonna get crucified for saying certain shit, y'all don't say certain things. Y'all want to omit certain things, but whenever an action is done, a similar action or action must have led to that reaction. And you have to think about who would have reason to react the way they reacted. Y'all don't know what August did to Tory because, again, Tory never said what happened. Never said what happened. When you called Tory, Tory said I'm in the studio. I've been in the studio. How did he lie? He went to where he went to and he went back to the studio. When you called him, that's where he was. Y'all need to really think about certain things. And y'all need to really look into yourselves and see if you're happy with yourselves. Because all of this conflict that you the people on YouTube do, like other content creators. Right now, one's in jail because one of them didn't stop targeting her till she got what she wanted. I don't know how that helps you, but you got what you wanted. Wait, it's not one, it's two. One's been in jail from last year early, and then this one went in before Christmas, before New Year's, I think. Like, y'all need to do better. Y'all really need to do better. And when you're saying deport Tory, Tory's coming back to Canada. Canada, over to the border right here. The little border that you could drive across over there, that y'all want to come over here when you hear about how many rights Canada has and how people live over here versus how y'all live over there. Y'all some miserable ass people. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe, and share. We're trying to get to 500 people so I could get a community tab. Have a good night. Bye.